welcome back to Magic, Witchcraft, and Religion. I am your instructor, David Leitner. And this week we're talking about rituals. Today I want to specifically talk about rites of passage. This is a specific kind of ritual focused around sort of transitioning from one stage of life to another, or from one status in a society to another. And they're really interesting. You're probably more familiar with them than you think you are. And we're going to have a look at that today. So, without further ado, okay, rites of passage. Now, a big influence on how we deal with rites of passage in anthropology comes to us from Victor Turner, who himself got much his sort of main model for this from Arnold van Gennep. From Van Gennep, rites of passage are rites which accompany every change of place, state, social position, and age. Turner chooses to focus on this word state, comparing it to, you can be in a state of happiness, or a state of sadness, or a state of wealth, or a state of poverty, or, in other words, state is kind of a value-neutral sort of description of the general circumstances of a person's life, and how they're situated right then. He chooses to use state rather than status, which is a word a lot of anthropologists use, because status doesn't carry the same sort of inclusive sort of sense, according to Turner. To him, the advantage of state is that you can be in a state of transition, but transition is not a status. In fact, it's the absence of status, as we'll see. He notes that rites of passage mark changes in legal status, positions, ranks, that sort of thing. It also marks changes in culturally recognized maturation stages. So, however your society decides who is child, adult, if they have an imaginary in-between thing called teenager, so be it. But whatever the culturally recognized stages of development are, you will find rites of passage for most of these. Okay. Now, the experience of going through a rite of passage or observing a rite of passage is very complex. The person who exits the rite of passage is not the same as the person who entered it. Initiates, like all members of society, have certain rights and obligations towards others, and others have certain rights and obligations towards them, based on who they are in that society and who they are in relation to other people. So their status in the society. That changes during the rite of passage. So they go in with one set of rights and obligations and exit with a different set of rights and obligations. Another important thing about rites of passage is that it is a space where the society rehearses and enacts the key values of that society. What are the key scenarios? For instance, we talked about with symbols last time. What are the key symbols of the society? You will probably see them here. And the other thing to remember about a rite of passage is there is a defining moment. There is a moment before the person became the new kind of person they are, and a moment after which they are the new kind of person. For Turner, rites of passage exist in 3 phases, and we'll go through each of these individually in a minute, but for now, just remember that they are separation, the liminal state, and aggregation. Separation refers to the ritual subject being separated from the rest of the community in some way. The margin or the liminal state is the period in between when in between separation and aggregation, when the initiate is neither their old self nor their new self. They are something in between. And aggregation, or reincorporation as it's sometimes called, is when the initiate is brought back into society with this new state, this new status. So I want to use a ritual we're probably most of us familiar with here, and that is graduation. Okay, graduation ceremonies are highly ritualized rites of passage. They begin with a separation. Okay, this is actually an image from Berkeley this past spring. Because there were no in-person graduations last year, this spring they did open up to allow both the 2020 and the 2021 graduates together graduate, and it was the largest graduation ceremony in the school's history, a total of more than 50 hours over the course of 5 days it took to actually get through everyone. But in the beginning, you are separated out. You are not with your family. You have to leave your family, leave your friends who aren't going through the ceremony, and you are there with the other initiates. You will eventually process into an auditorium or a stadium or something like that, and you will sit in a separate section from the other people who are just observing. You are set apart in terms of time because there is a date and a time specified for this when you must attend, and yet it is almost always after the term is over in some way. So, you don't get a lot of graduations that occur in the middle of term. It does occasionally happen, but they're not as big. You are separated by the way you dress during this event. You are wearing a cap and gown, and it is a uniform dress for the most part for everybody there, and yet there are also slight markers of individual identity. In U.S. graduations, we let students do a lot of personalization. Big tradition at Berkeley and a lot of other places is to use tape to write things or design things on your mortarboard that the audience will see but is not visible from the stage. In Berkeley, and I think a lot of other schools now, there's a big business in selling leis to family members who will put them around your neck before the ceremony, and you will get to sort of wear this during the ceremony. For some people that has cultural significance, for other people it's just part of this new ceremony that people have. The hoods that you wear, well, if you're an undergraduate, you don't have a hood in U.S. graduations. In other places, I got my graduate degree in England, and there at the University of Cambridge at least, undergraduates have a white ermine hood, and so for people getting their master's degree usually have a blue hood. Doctoral degrees are usually red hoods. So there's a distinction between the different participants. So I can tell this guy who's only standing half in the frame here is not an undergraduate student. He's probably a master's degree student. Doctoral students usually wear a different hat and have slightly different gowns that they wear. And so this is a way that we are separated out by dress and, of course, by behavior as well. You will be taking part in a procession. You'll be doing so mostly silently. There's obviously some room for waving and that sort of thing. But it wouldn't be appropriate to bust out in a loud rendition of I Kissed a Girl or something like that. I don't know why you would do that, but it wouldn't be appropriate. We all know that. So behavior is sort of policed in this way as well. Once you have entered the stadium and been seated, then you are in the liminal period. Actually, even from the time you're separated out, you are already entering that liminal period. Okay? You are in between in lots of different ways. Social status doesn't really matter at this moment. It doesn't matter that the guy next to you, is part of one of the richest families in the world, and the other person next to you is the first person in their family ever to go to college, right? That isn't supposed to matter at that point. You are sharing an experience to some degree. There's at least a temporary bond between all of you. But you are neither student at this point, nor are you graduate yet. Those are the two personas, the two statuses that are sandwiching this liminal state. During this liminal state, there are rehearsals of the values of the community. In this case, the academic community values learning. We usually recite all of the speeches will be about the value of knowledge, democracy, broadening your horizons, how you will do great things in the future, how the future is hopeful because of you. It's generally uplifting. There aren't a lot of commencement speeches that go, your life's over. You're just going to work to pay off your debt now. So good luck. That's not really a good commencement speech. No matter how honest or not it might be. The caps and your gowns themselves actually connect to some very ancient institutional norms in terms of Western universities, going back over 1,000 years at this point. And of course, the passing of the diploma is itself a sort of a signifier of sort of passing on knowledge in some way. Finally, you get to the reincorporation. You've all been called to the stage, individually received your diploma, gone down, sat down. And once everybody has been gone through, there will be a few more words, and then you'll be told to move your tassel from the right to the left. It is that moment when you are no longer a student, no longer in between. You are now a graduate, with all the rights and responsibilities that come with that. There's also a sort of unofficial ritual that goes on where students will toss their caps high in the air. You have this new status as graduate. It affords you new opportunities, right? You can apply for certain jobs that you couldn't apply for before. You have a slightly different status as someone who should be considered educated in some way. It may be a point of pride for the rest of your family that you managed to do this, because you might be one of the first who have done this. On the other hand, if your family expects this out of you, then you have finally entered the ranks of the people with degrees in your family. In one way or another, it changes who you are as a human being. Maybe not in your day-to-day sense, but at least in terms of some tangible rights and obligations you have, that it is. Some of the obligations may be at least obligations as an alumnus. I give to my alma maters a little bit. I don't have a lot of money, so I don't give a lot, but I give to them a little bit. And when they need, when there's a need for like people to review applications or to interview students, I'm happy to do that. Those are ways that I give back, but people have different ways of doing that. But you're tied to this institution now. You're a part of it. Anyways, that is the sort of read of the ceremony itself. But let's go back over that experience. The first thing I said about the experience is the person who goes in is not the person who comes out, right? And a graduate, as we can see, has new rights and obligations in the world towards others, and others have towards them. Key values are rehearsed and enacted. Learning and knowledge, employment and economic productivity, well-rounded lives, democracy, a hopeful future, and there is that defining moment, the tassels and the caps. Those are defining moments for this rite of passage. So that is an example of a rite of passage. I challenge you this week to take a look at other rites of passages you have gone through or that you know other people have gone through, and think about the way it fit these three stages? What aspects of it were part of separation? What aspects were liminal? And what aspects were reincorporation or aggregation? How does that affect the experience? How did the person go in being one person, come out being another? And what values were rehearsed? And what was the defining moment? Try to do that with some other rite of passage that you've seen in your life. With that said, I hope you all take care of yourself, stay safe this week, and I will see you again soon. Bye.